and welcome back to every single legendary lord ranked from worst to best in Warhammer 2. Today is the day that I finally go through with a promise I made long ago to rank all of the legendary lords from worst to best in the entire game in one video. Why did I do this? So thank you very much for all the support on the every faction ranked from worst to best video. That has now become the best performing video in the history of the channel. So yes, thank you very much for that. So hopefully this will live up to all the hype and anticipation. Also, this list is based on my opinion, so if you get offended that I put a lord that you like lower than you would put them, then it's a list based on my opinions. If you don't like my ranking, then be sure to leave yours down in the comments below. Also, side note, a lot of people have been asking for an updated ranking for every single faction, and I'm going to be doing that at the end. So, definitely be sure to stick around and don't just skip to the end to watch it, because I could really use the watch time. Okay, we have 69 lords to get through, so it's going to take us some time. So let's get right into it with 69th place. I'm actually grouping these three as one because it really makes sense to. 69th place, 68th place, and 67th place, of course, belong to the Warriors of Chaos with the same ordering that I ranked them in. So in last place, we have Sigvold. In 69th place, in 68th place, we have Archaon the Everchosen. And then in 67th place, we have Kolek Suneater. Now, the three Chaos Lords are, of course, dead last place because the Warriors of Chaos themselves are dead last place and always have been, and for some reason always will be, since CA refuses to give them a rework. This does unfortunately mean that the rap god Siggy himself is the worst lord in the entire game. But to be honest, 69th place, I really see no better lord to be there than the Scion of Slaanesh himself. In 66th place, we have Nakai the Wanderer. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this one, but just hear me out, okay? I'm aware that some people think I just give him a bad rap, but I absolutely hate him, and the Beastman rework that has shown how powerful Horde factions can be has just highlighted even more how terrible he is. Nakai is only higher than the Warriors of Chaos because his base faction is better than the Warriors of Chaos. He has expensive units with hardly any ways to make any really good money since the Lizardmen don't really base themselves around sacking and looting and raiding, so he tends to run out of gold at a rapid pace. On top of this, his vassal faction that is meant to help him out and account for this loss of gold doesn't really do anything, and is so easy to roll over that literal stacks of Skaven slaves can do it. He sucks, but luckily he's a little bit of an outlier for the lizards since most of them are a lot higher up. In 65th place, we have Skarsnik, and yes, I can already hear the comments. The green skins are incredibly strong, and you know what? You're right, but this guy sucks. He's not able to use anything larger than goblin units until he takes Karak 8 Peaks, and taking Karak 8 Peaks might not be so bad, but unfortunately, he has such a pilgrimage to get there that by the time he does, the armor that he does manage to build up will be battered and weakened and probably dead, and will absolutely lose that siege battle. On top of this, Skarsnik is also a kind of shitty lord in combat since he isn't the most combat proficient. He's just a little goblin with a pet squig, and the squig may be adorable, but it doesn't make up for the fact that the other lords in the faction are better battlers, better leaders, and just better in every single way. So Skarsnik lies here. In 64th place, we have Belgar Einhammer, and you know what? This one's going to be controversial, and he maybe could go a little bit higher, but screw it, I'm putting him here because I just think that his starting location, quite like Skarsnik's, is a real pain in the ass. Belgar is still the dwarven version of Skarsnik, and while all the dwarves have got a little bit better since their rework, he is still an incredibly difficult and weird lord to play. He also has to race to Karak 8 Peaks, but instead of only being able to recruit certain units, he can recruit whatever he wants, but he does have 50% increases to his upkeep, and the dwarves already have famously high upkeep, so this 50% increase is pretty crippling. Thankfully, as I said, you can recruit anything you want, so you can just build one big strong army and send it to take Karak 8 Peaks. And it is possible to do, and it's nowhere near as hard as it is for Skarsnik, but it's still a massive pain in the ass and just puts you so behind because you have to spend the first 20 or 30 turns rushing over to Karak 8 Peaks when you could be spending those 20 to 30 turns, actually progressing your campaign. Coming in 63rd place, we have Tahenuin, and I know I said a lot of the lizards are higher, but a few of them are still pretty bad. Yes, Tahenuin does have the potential to be very powerful, and once he gets to the top of his game, good lord, that is a strong lord. But he has so many goddamn roadblocks in the way of that greatness that it just becomes a bit of a chore to play as. He's surrounded by enemies, can only use weaker skink units unless he wants to cripple his economy, and skinks aren't actually that bad, but it adds a massive challenge to an already challenging campaign not using Saurus, which are the prime meat of an early game Lizardman army. If you're looking for an incredible challenge, then definitely be sure to check out Tahenuin, but if not, then he's just not very good. Coming in 62nd place, we have Alberic du Bordelot. He's bringing up the rear for the Bretonnians, and from here on out, I'd like to let you know that these guys are pretty middle of the road, so honestly, a lot of these could shift around, but this is my opinion, and frick Bretonia. To be honest, there's not really a lot wrong with Alberic, it's just a couple of things he doesn't have. He doesn't have the best starting location or the easiest start in war, he doesn't have the most impactful faction effects in the game for recruiting knights, he doesn't buff units you're going to use into the endgame, he's a fine battler, but he doesn't have anything special. He's just a bare bones lord if you ask me, and yes, this may be skewed by me not being any good at Bretonia. What are you going to do? It's my list. Coming in 61st place, we have Helm and Gorst, and this proves that my bias to the vampire counts isn't too bad. We all know I love the vampire counts, but you can't even justify the mayonnaise, man. He's just terrible. I mean, he buffs zombies for God's sake, so unless you're going for a zombie apocalypse campaign why would you bother taking him? Aside from that, his entire deal is corpse carts, which are some of the worst units in the game. The base corpse cart, as far as I'm concerned, is totally useless. The upgraded ones are a little bit better, but they still provide no value aside from their auras. If you want those auras, then just get the Mortis engine a little bit later on for an increased cost. It really doesn't make a difference. Or just spam a load of necromancers and get them on the corpse carts anyway. That way you get the effects and you get something that can cast spells and help your army aside from just sitting there doing nothing. The only good thing about him is the casualty replenishment, which is very nice, and the poison for all units in his army. But that being said, if you want poison units in all of your army, then just recruit him later on and you'll get poison units in all of his army. Just play Manfred. He has the same starting location anyway and is better in literally every single way. Coming in 60th place, we have Ungrim Ironfist, another lord with an insufferable gimmick revolving around very, very niche units. Now, I love a Slayer as much as the next hour, but as Marathi once said, everything in moderation. Aside from incest. Since the greenskin rework, he probably has actually come out the best, having one of the best starting locations for the faction since it's so far away from any of the powerful greenskin tribes and it will take them a little bit of time to get to him. But no starting location matters if all you can use is Slayers, on Slayers, on Slayers, on Slayers, on Slayers. Now Slayers are good at what they do, you know, taking on trolls, they're pretty nice, but if they're going against melee infantry, ranged infantry, some ranged cav they can't catch up to, some normal cav they can't catch up to, some flying units they can't catch up to, lords, pretty much anything that isn't trolls or similar large units to them, then they're not going to do too well. Now you can still use other units, but if you're going to do that, just use a different lord. Coming in 59th place, we have Kweek Headtaker, and I just heard a noise. It was like thousands of voices crying out in pain, as if they've just been snuffed out and told that their faction is not as good as they thought it was. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with this one. In particular, within the Skaven faction, they think that Tretch is worse. But you know what? I think Kweek is worse, and I'm going to quickly explain to you why. Now, Tretch isn't great, but Kweek starts off in a no man's land surrounded by so many powerful factions that he's going to get wiped out before anything happens. Since the dwarves got reworked and Ironbrow got added, he's actually in an even worse spot than he was before, so now he's extra super duper last place for the Skaven, if you ask me. The bottom right corner of the map has become its own little lustre with the amount of legendary lords crammed in there, and Kweek will be at war with pretty much all of them. He also doesn't really have any mechanics to speak of, so he's an extremely basic lord in an extremely dangerous location, and normally when the AI's playing him, you're lucky to confederate him before he gets wiped out. So when you play him, you're not going to have the best time. Although don't worry too much, because in 58th place, we have Tretch Craventail. Yes, Tretch is not very good, but he is better than Kweek. Now the thing I think puts Tretch above Kweek is pretty much everything. He still has a hostile starting location, but it's a little more manageable than Kweek's. His Storm Vermin buffs are also pretty nice since leadership is hard to come by for the rats. His army effects are great and play well with the ratty playstyle. Now he is a worse battler, but that's not enough to make me think that Kweek is an outright better lord for leading the faction. Don't get me wrong, neither of them are very good, but Tretch is 100% better than Kweek. In 57th place, we have Tic-Toc-Toe. Aside from being named after the worst app to ever grace the planet, he's also not a very good lord. Granted, he is free LC, so you didn't expect him to be outstanding, and that's right, since he's just straight up basic. He starts in the desert far away from his allies, and is at war with an Empire faction right out the gate, so that is no fun for anyone. His faction also focuses on flying units, which, you know, they're fun and all, and they can provide an interesting playstyle, but if you just focus entirely on flying units, your army will literally die of zero leadership, because apparently you can't fight unless you have something sat on the floor. The one thing I do like about him is his unique right that refreshes the movement range of all characters in his faction, so you can move your entire range, use this right, and then move an entire range again. That's right, Taurox might be the one to perfect this method, but Tickle Tackle Toe was the one to introduce it to the game. Still, it's more of a time saver than anything else, so it's nowhere near as powerful. In 56th place, we have Throgg. Ah yes, our first Norska lord to appear on the list, and also the most recent lord to be ranked, and I think it's pretty clear to see why he's this low on the list. Norska themselves are not very powerful, and Throgg as a lord leading Norska is just so meh. His faction effects stink, his starting location is poopy, and he's not really a great battler anyway, especially once you get out of the early game. His army effects, however, really dope. Immunity to attrition is absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, that does sum up everything that's good about Throgg, so here he lies. In 55th place, we have Aaroness Saltshite. The first of the vampires to appear on this ranking, Saltshite has been a bit of a running joke since the vampires were introduced to the game. First of all, she starts nearby to a dummy thick number of potential enemies. We're talking Empire, we're talking Bretonnia, we're talking Rats, we're talking Estalia, we're talking Border Princes. There are so many people that start off right next door to her that if they all decide to declare war on her at once, she's not going to have a very good time. She's also a terrible battler, and I mean like can be beaten by some generic lords level terrible battler, and she never gets better. She doesn't have access to any of the massive mounts that the other vampires do. She just stays like this with her weird spiky legs. She does, however, allow recruitment of Sartosan units, which are pretty neato. They don't really change anything in the roster, so they're not really a game changer. She also can make a lot of money, but when you're playing as the vampires, any of them can make a lot of money, so it really doesn't change anything. In 54th place, we have another greenskin, and oof, another greenskin so low in the ranking. But honestly, just look at Azhag and tell me different. It's just basic. It doesn't have much going for him other than the greenskins being reworked and being strong. The things that he has that I like are his starting location. It's completely unique. No one else really starts near him. And also his climate preferences that allow the greenskins to actually effectively take on the Empire rather than just sacking and raiding it. He also has the Law of Death, but it's not really my favorite law. And when I'm playing as the greenskins, I'm always going to take the Law of the Big Wire anyway. So it doesn't really change anything for me. There's nothing inherently wrong with him, there's just nothing that makes him stand out. In 53rd place, we have Cylostra Deerfan, everyone's favourite opera performer who does it every goddamn time you try to speak to her. Now, when the AI plays her, she gets wiped out in 20 turns tops, so when you choose to play her, you have to put up a bit of a decent fight to survive. Faction also focuses on buffing units so you either won't use it all or will only use a little bit, so that's a total waste of faction effects. She does have decent army buffs to her, and she herself is fun to play, especially with the giant Crabbo, but she's nothing special. I feel like I'm saying that a lot here, but this middle block of lords is kind of the same problem. There's nothing inherently bad about them, there's just nothing that makes them special or that makes them very good. They're very mediocre, which, to say we're only in 53rd place, I think that says a lot about the game and how most of the lords are fairly balanced. Although, as we'll come to find out higher in the list, a few of them, they're really not. In 52nd place, we have Gutep, and what I just said there, Gutep is a little bit of an exception to this, because he is only higher because of the relative strength of the Tomb Kings. First of all, he starts miles away from the desert, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the entire point of every Tomb King faction is to be in the desert, to build the pyramids, to get the Books of Nagash, to, you know, unlock some magical power. And he starts in the butt crack of the world on the far west side of the map next to all the Dark Elves. Why? His effects are also very bare bones, with things that you would find on any generic lord, and he's also not a very good battler. I mean, granted, he can get on the Casket of Souls, but even then, he's just a Roomba artillery piece that once he gets charged down, he'll be instantly taken out. In 51st place, we have Heinrich Kemmler, the Necromancer. Heinrich is in a bit of a weird spot, both his actual starting location and his power. If he started somewhere else, he'd probably be way stronger, since his faction effects are actually pretty nice, being able to spam Necromancers and lead his army outside of vampire lands without fear of attrition, but he starts in this mountain pass, suffocating him between the combined thighs of Bretonnia and the Empire. His ability to ignore Untainted also doesn't extend to his lands, so your armies may move on okay, but any settlements you take will still take 6 months to come around to vampiric corruption. He's also a middle-of-the-road battler, with no real combat prowess himself aside from his spells, but the ability to summon Krell to do his dirty work for him, which kind of evens him out. In 50th place, we have Marathi. God damn, I hated playing her, and I know a lot of people say she's really strong, but I just don't see it. First of all, she starts sandwiched between the lizards and the high elves that are constantly attacking her, and they give you no time to breathe until they are dealt with. Also, she for some reason requires chaos corruption wherever she goes, and spreading corruption is a pain in the ass for the factions that specialize in it, but for a faction that doesn't, it just turns that pain up to 11, and I absolutely despise it. She also has barely any army effects, and in battle, she's just a spellcaster. She does a decent amount of damage, but she's still super squishy and can be taken out by generic lords. On top of all this, she's also boning as some Malekith, and that's just cringe, bro. In 49th place, we have Malice Darkblade. Double bill for the Dark Elves, but what can I say? He blows, and that makes 2 Dark Elf lords in a row that are into blowing. To be honest, Malice wouldn't be half as bad as he is if it wasn't for 2 things: his ridiculous name and his starting location, or should I say locations. He starts with 2 settlements on opposite ends of the map, and the one you can give back is probably the one you'd want to keep so you can hang out with all your other edgelord homies. Now you can technically get Malice over to the Nagron side if you replace him as a lord and then recruit him back over there, but A, that's a massive faff, and B, you're going to lose that army, including all of his starting units that you start with over there, that will take you a long time in the campaign to get back. On top of this, the Black Ark that's there is totally trapped because for some reason, this tiny little ocean on the bottom right-hand corner of the map is not connected to the massive gargantuan ocean that gives you access to the rest of every single settlement in the entire world. In conclusion, faction, not that bad, but starting location and logistics surrounding it, big dumb, makes him big bad. Coming in 48th place, we have Imrick, another case of a very powerful lord in a very terrible starting location that royally screws him over. Now, Imrick's faction revolves around fantastic dragons and how to tame them. And once you get on with taming these lads, you do tend to get quite power spikes since they are very powerful units. But the act of actually getting to the point where you are able to complete these battles to tame them is a different story altogether, since these battles can be very challenging and require pretty high tier armies. Unfortunately, he starts miles away from all the other high elves, so he doesn't really get any support, be it financial or military, to assist him in his horrific starting location. Plus, he has reduced relations with them anyway, so even if you do get some embassy over there to make contact, it doesn't really mean that they're going to be friends with you. So you're left to fend for yourself against the greenskins, the rats, and pretty much anyone else in that area who wants to take you on. Other than these dragons, he also really doesn't have anything going for him, aside from some slightly different rights, but if you ask me, that doesn't make enough difference to make him any better. It takes him far too long to come online as a faction and a lord, and the climb to that is so steep that I'm not willing to do it. In 47th place, we have our other Norscan lord, Wolfrick the Wanderer. So both of the Norscan lords being solo on the list means that Norska, I think, now are the second worst faction in the game, which is a pretty prestigious position. The reasons that Wolfrick is higher than Throgg is, the better starting location, the better faction effects, the better ability to take over the Empire due to that starting location, and of course the fact that Wolfrick scales so well into the late game due to his ability to get on board a Mammoth. The only thing that's really holding Norska back from being any higher is the fact they are quite dated as a faction. They're not quite Warriors of Chaos bad, but they're still pretty clunky to play and could use some rejuvenation. Coming in 46th place, we have our first Empire Lord, Marcus Wolfheart. I don't really think it's any surprise to anyone to see him this low on the list. If you remove all the handicaps from Marcus, he's honestly one of the strongest lords in the game since he has so many good things going for him. Unfortunately, they balance out with all these handicaps, and they balance him a little bit too well, and he ends up being much worse than he is good. He has this collection of legendary heroes that he can recruit that no other Empire faction can get access to, and you complete these quest lines and they become super strong. He also gets regular reinforcements from the Empire without having to do pretty much anything apart from expand. Unfortunately, he gets punished for doing pretty much any of these things. If he expands, he gets punished in so many ways. It makes his public order terrible. It makes all the lizardmen armies that are coming against you by default even more strong. It makes more of those armies appear. It just punishes you for expanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't Total War a 4x game, and one of those X's is expand? He also can't really do any proper recruitment of his own, and he also isn't an elect count, so can't make use of the elect count system. It's ironic, really. He could save the Empire with his rework, but not himself. Coming in 45th place, we have Deathmaster Snitch, and it may be a surprise to a lot of you that Snitch is so low, but I don't know what it is about him. I just don't think he's very good. I think it's probably another case of feature bloat, which makes him way too complicated and too difficult to play, and therefore a little bit bad if you haven't got, 6 months to learn him. His shadowy dealings can do a lot for you once you get them online, but it's just a grind to get things going, and until then, you are struggling to build armies, and you have to focus on stealth units. And, I know that the Skaven, they do like ambushing and a little bit of stealth, but it's not really their main battle strategy since that is monsters and giant guns. Now, his improved ambush stance used to be really strong until ambush got nerfed, and so now it's not as strong, so he's fallen quite heavily in the power rankings since that is something they relied on quite heavily. Also, Snitch is a great duelist, but as I found out many moons ago in the Lord's Tournament, he can literally be beaten by a generic assassin version of himself. So he's not great. So yeah, it doesn't even have that thing going for him. In 44th place, we have Volkmar the Grim, the bald beauty himself. Now, he would be much higher if he didn't have the same problem as Helm. He focuses on useless units. Flagellants, okay? They are a turd. No matter how much makeup you put on them or roll them in glitter, they are still a turd. Don't focus all of your faction effects and all your army effects and every single buff that you bring to the faction on terrible units, because at the end of the day, they are still terrible units with some slightly improved stats. He has everything else going for him. He has a brilliant starting location. He himself as a lord scales beautifully into the endgame with a collection of fantastic mounts and battle prayers, but he's just terrible because he buffs flagellants and nothing else. In 43rd place, we have Arkan the Black. Of course, he's higher than Gutep because he actually starts in the desert, but being hated by literally everyone there does kind of balance things out and make him quite difficult and quite bad, but nowhere near as bad as Gutep. He also gains access to some vampire counts units, but, I love the vampire counts, but the units he gets access to, they're not game changers, and they don't even really change the meta of the Tomb Kings that much. So once you get out of the mid-game, you kind of stop using them, and it just becomes a regular Tomb King Lord with some weird vampiric corruption every now and then. Honestly, he's basically this high because the Tomb Kings are a pretty strong faction, and he himself as a lord is a great fighter, decent spellcaster, can get on some fun mounts, and is a competent leader. But he's no high because, as I said, he's hated in the nation and fighting on almost every single front. In 42nd place, we have Krockgar. Oh, poor Krockgar. He starts so far away from all his friends that I do have to wonder what he did to deserve to be exiled this far away on the opposite side of the map. He's totally alone, so if you run into any trouble, you have only you to pull yourself from the mess. He does, however, have some nice army buffs I think make him halfway decent, especially once you get later into the game and can make use of all these buffs. Sadly, he has to actually make it later into the game, which is an incredible challenge. As I said, it's becoming its own little Lustria bowl in this bottom right corner of the map, and Krockgar is definitely not the most powerful player there. Another middle-of-the-road lord with a poor starting location that drags him way further down than he probably should be. In 41st place, we have Teklis. Oh, poor weak little Teklis, truly the Danny DeVito to Tyrion's Arnold. He's one of the original Lustria starters, and his situation has only got more dire as the game's life cycle has gone on. Over time, more and more potential enemies have popped up, and not really too many potential allies. His faction effects do let him get on better with the good factions in the area like the Lizardmen, but it's nothing compared to the wretched hive of scum and villainy that you see with the rest of the enemies in the area. He also takes quite a while to come online as an army leader. Since he's a spellcaster, it takes quite a while into your campaign before he actually starts to do a lot of his spells. When you start off, He's pretty much just a guy with a stick and a fireball. In 40th place, we have a Lithuana. He's a bit better than Teklis. This is mainly due to his 2 unique movement stances that he brings to the faction that allow him to use the underways, and the ambush on the move, which is still pretty strong even if it's been nerfed. Other than that, he's pretty bare bones and a basic faction with a star that isn't on ult one, so that's going to be a no from me. It would be high, but he focuses on these shadow units that aren't really powerful, and he doesn't start on ult one. Now we're getting towards the realm of lords that are actually pretty good, which is impressive since we've still got 38 more to go. Loki is a pretty average Dark Elf faction, but since Dark Elves are pretty strong right now, he specializes in getting as many black arcs as possible, which means that he can tear up the coastline like the Dark Elf pirate that he is. He's a basic lord through and through, but if you're looking for a faction that is simple and strong, then he's a great pick. In 38th place, we have Crownhelbron. Her faction relies on these Death Knights to keep the faction strong and healthy, which means you have some pretty high highs, but some incredibly low lows. If you're an out of slaves, which can happen quite a lot if you're spending them on literally anything but the Death Knights, then Crownhelbron's faction takes a bit of a nosedive. She also has a focus on niche units that are strong but don't make up the majority of your armies, so tend not to get used a massive amount, especially later into the game, so her buffs end up ultimately being unused. She's more complex than Loki, and when she's on top, she's probably in a more dominating position, but she does require a little more macro management to use well. In 37th place, we have Lord Skrolk. Our Lustrian Skavenlord thrives on plagues, which, while a bit faffy to get going, do provide a ton of utility in the form of buffs for his faction and debuffs to the enemy. His upkeep reductions are for units that you'll be using right to the end of the game and continue to get value with all through to the end of your campaign. He's a solid all-around lord that is on the simpler side of the Skaven, and that's not a bad thing since they can quickly become too complicated if you allow them. Deathmaster Snitch, for example. In 36th place, we have Orion. The Wood Elf rework really shot all these lords to the moon, so it's no surprise that this is the first we're seeing of them. Orion is the worst Wood Elf lord, mainly because he's the most basic. He's still very, very powerful with all their mechanics of the deep roots and the magical forest buffs you can stack, but his wild hunts are very underwhelming, and the rest of his faction effects range from niche to almost never being used. So here he lies. Conversely, Draika is probably the most complex of the Wood Elf lords, although calling her Wood Elf is probably incorrect, and would most likely lead to a swift kick to the awakening of my wood, if I said it to her face. She's the only Wood Elf faction without access to the Oak of Ages from turn 1, which means you need to acquire it via different means, which can be a lot more of a challenge when you see how incredibly defended it is. She also doesn't use Wood Elf units quite in the same way and prefers Tree Spirit units and using Wood Elf units as chaff, which is a complete turn on its head of how the actual faction works when you're not playing as her. If she didn't have access to those unique summonable units as well as Codil, she'd probably be below Orion, but because she does, she's just above him. In 34th place, we have Khalda. Now she does take a little while to get started in the campaign since she's a short hop, skip and a jump away from the main desert, and there's a fair few obstacles in the way before you can get there. This is nothing compared to Gutep, but it's still not instantly into the desert. The mechanics are decent, if not out of this world. More ammo for all units and better relations with other bonus city boys is very nice. Giving poison to all units in her army is also really neato, so your early battles as her will be much more in your favour. Again, she's another lord that's got nothing wrong with her, and it's just so high because her faction is pretty good, and she's not terrible. In 33rd place, we have Luther Harkon, the Mad Pirate Lord himself, and the living embodiment of the YouTube comment section. To be honest, the only thing that puts Luther above other lords, especially inside his own faction, is his ease of use. He starts in Lustria, and everyone there wants to take him out, but somehow it's still easier than Cylostra or Aaroness. The leadership he provides when going against the Lizardmen does turn the tide just enough in his favour that it's not too horrendous of a challenge, and it doesn't take long before you're sailing the seas and singing shanties. Again, looking at his start location and the amount of potential enemies, I don't know why he isn't worse, but he just isn't. It really doesn't make much sense, but it's just how it feels. In 32nd place, we have the most recent addition to the Lizardmen roster, Oxyotl, and landed more or less in the middle of the pack is pretty good and shows that he's relatively balanced. His start location is probably one of the worst, only beaten out by Nakai, and if the enemies decide to become more aggressive, you can't really do much about it. His missions take him all over the map, but it's a danger to leave your home province totally undefended, so until you get a second army on the go, you are constantly going back and forth. However, this second army is a struggle since you spend all of your time on missions rather than traditionally expanding, so your ability to pay for this second army is a little bit impeded. Oxy's near global presence is pretty great, but since it's just his army and none of his others, it's really not strong enough and ends up being a side quest rather than the real meat of your campaign. In 31st place, we have Mazdamundi. He's the first Lizardman that we saw in the gameplay trailers, and he has won our hearts for years now with his gargantuan badonkadonk. He's basic and simple, but by God, he sure is strong. His start location isn't quite in Lustria, but you can easily make contact and set up a network of allies and confederations without having to step foot into that Royal Rumble. He also eventually is a very powerful lord, and his secure start location allows him to reach his powerful stage without too much trouble. In 30th place, we have Thork Ironbrow. He's the most recent lord to be added to the dwarves along with their rework, and he's the first legendary dwarf lord to be a runesmith. He does start in a bit of a rough spot with the greenskins, rats, and vampires all standing in your way before you make contact with your dwarven brothers, but the dwarves are in a pretty good spot right now, so it's not too horrific of a challenge. Despite everything, he's still a brilliant strong lord of that runic magic right out the gate, which really does make a big difference, especially because dwarf lords can both fight and cast runes at the same time. The only downside to him is the large number of grudges that he starts off with, but thanks to the reworking of the grudges system, it's not really that much of an impediment, and is more of just free slays every now and then. In 29th place, we have Lord Luen Yonker. He's one of the strongest one-on-one battlers in the game, but sadly for him, the rest of his faction just doesn't live up to this. He has boring and basic faction effects that are useful, but could, again, be on any old lord. He also doesn't get a lot in the form of army effects, unless you're off against very specific targets, which a lot of the time you're not. The only really good thing about him is he starts with all the vows unlocked so he can avoid doing all the stupid side quests. As I said, Luen is a brilliant fighter, but the rest of his faction is just so basic that I can't put him any higher. In 28th place, we have Eltharion the Grim, and if I'm remembering correctly, this is a large change from my high elf ranking, and I'm going to try and explain why. Yes, Eltharion has a sucky 2 starting locations, which makes his early game into a juggle, and I have terrible hand-eye coordination as it is, so I hate juggling. But if you do manage to pass this juggle, he can have so many bloody faction effects that it's hard not to do well as the guy. He has all the undersettlement upgrades that get him all these powerful buffs and units, as well as his Ultron buffs that make it into a truly impenetrable fortress. He has such a medley of effects that can help you right out the gate all the way to the end game, so if you can handle a little bit of multitasking, call this guy butter, because he's on a roll. In 27th place, we have Thork Grudgebearer. He's in control of the homeland of the OG dwarves. At the moment, it's a pretty tough stronghold, since the dwarf rework put a bit more pep in their step. He's great for reaching out to the other dwarf clans and confederating at record speed without having to really try, since they just already love you so much. His faction effects save you a lot of money over the course of the campaign, and allow you to get plenty of elite military units and buildings on the go nice and fast. Overall, he's another one of those lords that has pretty straightforward effects, so it's very easy to be quite strong. In 26th place, we have Kazrak the One-Eye. Yes, I don't really know what I was thinking putting this lad above Malagor, since he's just so basic that it hurts. He's just a beast lord really, and none of his effects are really that great. I mean, the increased ambush chance, it's been nerfed. The increased evasion chance when using the beast paths, like it makes any difference to my luck. His army effects are also a bit basic, and while they are fine, they just aren't anything incredible. This really sums him up. He is fine, and there's nothing wrong with him, and with the Beastman rework, he's pretty strong, but he's just nothing special. In 25th place, we have Manfred von Karstein. He's probably the easiest vampire lord since he has the best starting location and is the best all-around battler. However, with just a little more practice, you can use some of the other ones better, so sadly he falls here, but hey, being this close to the top 1/3 isn't bad. His faction effects are very simple and will always give you value, and the same can be said for his army effects, meaning you get constant value from turn 1, pretty much all the way to the end. He's just an all-around solid lord. In 24th place, we have Malagor the Dark Omen. Yeah, I'm not putting him any higher than this. You might think that he's the best beast lord and the best lord in the entire game, but I just don't see it. He's better than Kazrak, but he's not out of this world. He has a hero focus, which is a bit cheesy for me, but if that's your thing, then go right ahead, I'm not going to stop you. Other than that, he has some nice effects of a hell of a lot of extra campaign move range when you combine his lord and his faction effects. His debuff for enemy armies are also pretty epic, and of course he's a lovely flying spellcaster, but he's squishy as hell and he'll go no further, bruv. In 23rd place, we have the final dwarf legendary lord, Grombrindle. The top spot for dwarves remains unchanged and just about breaks into the top third of the ranking. It's pretty plain to see why he's the best dwarf. He still has that central starting location that is much harder to take down after the rework. He also has those effects that he just gets for free that buff him throughout the whole campaign, and he's still the unstoppable force he's always been in battle. From here on out, we get into lords I would consider good, so don't think that he's bad just because he's in 23rd place. All of these lords from here on out are actually good lords, it's just that there are so many good lords, they have to rank them somehow. In 22nd place, we have Balthazar Gelt. The Supreme one still isn't the Supreme Empire faction, unfortunately, and it's more or less down to his starting location, since Reichland is just so robust and sets up your economy so damn well going into the game. He is, however, a seriously strong force to be reckoned with great faction effects, lord effects, and of course, being a quality army leader to boot. His starting location isn't too bad with the fort and all, but it just isn't Reichland, otherwise he'd probably be higher. But hey, you can always confederate that anyway. In 21st place, we have Malekith. Of course, Malekith is the OG Dark Elf to come to Warhammer 2, so it makes sense he's one of the simpler ones to play. He has an extremely defensible capital settlement, and it lets him make alliances or betrayals with relative safety before later taking on the High Elves. His faction effects leave something to be desired, with them only really netting him some quick confederations and easier leveling of other lords in the faction. His army effects are great for the cheaper upkeep and will always be useful. He's of course a great battler and a powerful spellcaster, so he's a great choice for leading your armies. He's a quality all-around lord. In 20th place, we have Tyrion, who is basically the Christian version of Malekith because he has all the same traits, but he's just slightly different. A secure and powerful starting location with lots of confederations to do. Check. Improves the relations to others of the same faction. Check. Improvements to core units. Check. Strong lord for leading early armies with decent scaling into the late game. Checkaroo. He may be boring, but by God, is he pretty strong, and he's a fantastic beginner's dream. In 19th place, we have Grimgar Einheid, who is yet another of the OG faction lords from Warhammer 1. Pre-rework, he would have been so far at the bottom, but today he's all the way in the top 20, and it's for very good reason. Black Crag is a great starting stronghold, if a little close to the dwarves, but nowadays it doesn't pose too much of a threat as long as the player's in charge. Affects both faction and army, boosts his Black Orcs, which are top tier units anyways, so with these buffs, they're over the top strong, and it's hard not to love it. Grimgar is also a great battler and can be incredibly tough to take down, even for the toughest of the Dowie. In 18th place, we have Leoness, or Bretonnian Joan of Arc if you prefer. The faction is pretty good, and even I, the Bretonnian hater, have to admit that. While she may not have the easiest starting location, she has so many nice little effects helping there that it just really doesn't matter. Massive upkeep reduction for heroes makes a world of difference to your gold. Upgrades to units you'll use all through the mid-game make that rough spot in the campaign much less daunting. Buffs for the weakest units in the faction that make them a step above useless is nothing short of a miracle, if a little bit like Helm buffing the zombies. To top it all off, she's a great fighter, even if she doesn't really have any progression. In 17th place, and it does kind of hurt me to say this, we have Karl Franz. Oof, Empire, not even making top 10. Never thought I'd see the day, but you know what? Honestly, they deserve it, since that many other factions have caught up to them that they can take them out without too much hassle. Of course, he has the legendary starting location and easier confederations, but aside from that, he's just super basic. Yes, he's still strong, and those basic effects are easy to use, but they can only take you so far, and once you have a little game experience, you can do a lot more with other lords. Sorry, Karl, but it just has to be this way. Now in 16th and 15th place, we have Vlad and Isabella, and yes, it might be my vampire counts bias that's putting these two so high, but I believe they are incredibly strong, especially since they've been souped up recently. Now they are probably interchangeable here, but I'm going to leave them as they are because it means Isabella is on top. And it just makes me happy. Anyway, aside from being one hot-ass power couple, they're also incredibly strong in the campaign, especially since they can take that power couple energy into battle and buff each other just by being there. And you can start to make use of this from turn 1, and it's just crazy. Add Vlad's stupid XP production for all units in the Army and faction, and you can quickly collect a large force of elite units that have even the most staunch of enemies shaking in their boots. In 14th place, we have these Sisters of Twilight. Now they have access to all the same powerful mechanics as the other Wood Elves, but they also come with regular access to powerful items that can make a massive difference to the stats of each lord and hero that takes them, which is pretty top tier. The faction effects also grant more ammo to all units in a faction that is known for crazy powerful ranged units, and it's just absolutely insane. Add reduced upkeep to this from an army, and it just makes them crazy. You also get the little bonus nugget in the form of the powerful ability for Hawk Riders, and you have a pretty great faction with two powerful leaders that are great fighters both in melee and from range. In 13th place, we have Durthu, and yes, the Woodman really does lead the Wood Elves, and it is for 4 very simple reasons. He has the joint best starting location, he has aspects to buff tree spirit units and make them actually viable, total immunity to attrition for his army, and being a big tree lad that can cause a ton of destruction in combat with magic. This guy is just top notch in every aspect. In 12th place, we have Morgur the Shadowgave. Some people might be upset I put Morgur so high, but what can I say, the guy is a machine and gets some crazily powerful abilities. Increased replenishment, yes please. Cheaper horde building, yes please. Ability and item that both summon chaos spawn in combat, a yes please. Yes, as an individual lord, he's pretty strong, and with his faction, he's even stronger, and I just think he's better than the others. In 12th place, we have Faye, and I can't even explain the pleasure it gives to me to deny Bretonnians getting into the top 10. But I really think they deserve it. Faye is only so good because she's so easy, it's actually boring and it kind of hurts. She basically gets left alone at the start of her campaign, so can do whatever she wants. She can get more peasants right out the gate than anyone else, which you are always needing early on. She replenishes faster than anyone else. She can also use Grail Guardians without completing the vows, though by the time you recruit them, you should probably have those side quests done anyway. On top of this, she's a floating spellcaster of the Law of Life. Sneaking into the top 10, we have the guy that will never get you a drink when you ask for it, because Cetra does not serve. Cetra is such a solid lord that it really does look like he was made first, then the other Tomb Kings were built up around him. He has quality faction effects that assist the race with their infrastructure troubles. He has basic but useful army effects and starting units that clean house with anything he runs into early on. And to top it all off, Cetra is the best battler in the faction, and is also a caster to get some top tier value in battle, even if it's an underwhelming Law of Nehekara. In 9th place, we have Grom, and if this was based solely on starting location, Grom would have been way lower because it truly is a stinker, and I abandon it and get to the Wasteland as soon as I possibly can. If we ignore his starting location and take a look at the rest of his kit, then good God. The Cauldron mechanic is honestly one of the most stupid broken things to be added since Ike's workshop, because some of the effects you can get from it, even early on, are total insanity. On top of this, Grom's penchant for goblin units allows him to utilize them better than anyone else, even, I don't know, the guy that can literally only use them until he takes Carrick 8 peaks. Way to spit in Skarsnik's face, Grom. Grom is also hella sexy and available on t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more at COLONELDAMNEDERS.store, and you know, is a pretty strong charging lord. In 8th place we have Alariel, and it is no surprise to anyone that she is this high on the list because the lady is literally the Sisters of Avalon lady, and we all know how perfectly balanced they are. Aside from that, she has a stupidly secure starting location at the centre of Ulthuan, gets buffed for Ulthuan being totally under Hive control, and improves regions just by being there, which is a little bit ridiculous. She's also a decent spellcaster, but honestly that's the most minor part of her power because wow is she super duper strong. Oh, and she's also the best lord in the game to get the Sword of Cain on, because those public order buffs can handle the debuffs, and the insane amount of income that the High Elves can make can negate the insane amount of upkeep reduction that the Sword of Cain causes. Oh, and also she starts right next door to the shrine, so can take it in like 15 turns anyway. In 7th place we have Throgg the Unclean, who is the most recent rat lord to get added last year, and he came with another absolutely stupid system that allows him to buff basically every single unit in the faction at the cost of some pretty easy to acquire resources. I don't know what it is about the Skaven that makes devs just do a fat rail and then think, ah yes, this will be balanced, but whatever it is, it gives me lots of excuses when I lose against them. His lab lets him make every single unit in the game into mutated monsters with some staggering effects that only get more complex and useful. Granted, you have to do this to units individually, but the currency used isn't too hard to come by, and you also get a lot of use out of each shipment. Oh, also his faction further buffs monster units, as well as his army buffs and his personal skill tree. Combine this with his close proximity to the Empire Plains, and all that land that was previously a stronghold, you know what it is now?
It's free real estate.
In 6th place we have Wurzag, and honestly Wurzag is only really high for 3 reasons. Starting location that allows him to snowball more than probably any lord in the game with the amount of tribal confederations that he can get. Incredibly powerful lord in combat with access to the Law of the Big Wow, which is one of the best destructive laws of magic in the game, and also his absolutely fire dance moves. Again, before the rework, he was really nothing special, but since then, he's just been scarily strong. Yeah, his Savage Orc focus isn't really the best thing in the game, but you don't need to make use of it to do well as him. In 5th place, we have Count Noctilus, and I'm not sure how it's possible that a lord can have a starting location that is both the actual middle of the map and also pretty damn defendable, but here we are. Anyway, that isn't even the source of his power. That comes from his faction effects, starting units, and eventual mounting options. This lad can recruit more units from his shipbuilding, which is epic, reduce recruitment duration for Necrofex units, which is even more epic, can eventually ride on one, which is just incredibly epic, and starts with one of them in his army, which is gigantic brain, megamind epic, and I really can't see why anyone thought this was okay. The other pirate lords are lords who are also pirates, but this swashbuckler is the definitive pirate experience, so blast the shanties and strap yourself in for an absolutely wild ride. In 4th place, we have Gorok, and honestly the faction itself isn't that crazy. I mean, yeah, getting a right from Breakable Saurus among a lot of other buffs for them is strong and all, but that doesn't warrant putting them this high. You know what does though? Give them instant access to a 1000-year-old frog with the most overpowered magic in the entire game on turn 1. I don't need to tell you how stupid Croak is, because you already know from experience and from the countless Reddit posts made about the lad. It gives a faction such a head start that I have no choice but to put them this high. In 3rd place, we have Rakarth, and this is yet another case of the latest lord to be added to a faction being super strong, but I don't think anyone expected Rakarth to hit the scene like he did. I'm talking about how he can tame beasts at a disgusting rate and get access to more powerful units than anyone should really have access to in that stage of the game. You may be thinking, but surely this is balanced by the high upkeep. Well yeah, it is, but he also gets a reduction to that, so go absolutely nuts. He also starts Albion and is the sole reason why Nakai mains have achieved a new level of crippling depression. Not to mention the fact that this also means he can steamroll the Empire while they are still battling with pointy sticks. It honestly feels like that moment in Spore when you have the spaceship and visit the planet that is still in the tribal stage and you just nuke the shit out of him. Yeah, he's OP as hell is what I'm getting at. In 2nd place, we have Ike Claw. Yes, I know it's very shocking, but I don't think the Cheese Master is the best lord in the game. I think it's bloody close. If you've been living under a rock and don't know, Ike Claw is the originator of unbelievable power spikes wrapped up into a neat little DLC. His faction has all the other stuff that the rats have access to, but also has something called a laboratory. And let me just rattle off a couple of the things that this can do for you. It buffs your most powerful ranged units with things such as more ranged and literally unlimited ammo, buffs your technological units that are also crazy to begin with more ranged firepower and charging damage. Oh yes, and let's not forget being literally able to use f***ing nuclear weapons. Ike should be locked away for war crimes with the key thrown away, and yet, I don't think he's the strongest. In 1st place, would you believe it? It's the most recent lord to be added to the game, and it's also the most overpowered lord. It is Taurox. Yes, it could just be because he's new that he feels so strong, but it's been a few months now, and he just still feels absolutely insane. He has all the strengths of the reworked Beastmen, like 0 cost for recruitment and upkeep, incredible amounts of income, and constant progression from attacking anything that moves, and of course, the insane monster units. But he also comes with this bullshit rampage ability that lets his personal army move more or less as many times as he wants, as long as he keeps battling, winning, and fueling his rampage. This means that in a single turn, you can literally do laps of the map and fight as many battles as you can win in a row, and it's just crazy. You also get these little buffs for reaching each tier of the rampage, but honestly, you hardly notice this. This means he's the easiest lord to farm Dread, and will have no trouble upgrading his capacity to get as many of the top tier units as you want. He's totally crazy, and I pray he gets a nerf in some form or another before they leave Warhammer 2, because sweet Jesus, he's crazy, and we are so lucky that the AI still can't really use the Beastmen, because otherwise it would just be a shit show of Beastman domination every single campaign. And that's it, I'm done. I've ranked every single legendary lord in the game, and we have no more DLCs coming unless they decide to make the pre-order DLC also accessible to Warhammer 2 as well as Warhammer 3. But they wouldn't do something like that, right? Oh, and as I mentioned at the start, I know a lot of people have been wanting an updated faction ranking, so I'm going to use it on a points-based system using this Lord's ranking, and I'll put that on screen now. Wow, would you look at that? I'm totally not working this out later because I've been writing for like 2 days solid, and I don't want to do any more writing, so I'll do it later. Anyway, I'm going to go because I've been talking for way too long. If you enjoyed this video, you know, maybe leave it a like and do that subscribe thing if you really, really enjoyed it a lot and want to see more. But you know, only if you really enjoyed it. If not, then maybe just leave it a like. One last plug of the merch store. If you want some sweet clothing to let everyone know what Sigma male you are, then check out the merch store. I personally love all the designs, and I'm not a biased person at all. Thanks to everyone for supporting the channel, especially Kobe Said So, and it's your boy LC. Really appreciate every single one of you so much. That's all from me, so for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.